Hi, my name is Megan, and I'm an alcoholic. I know it's kind of weird looking at me like I'm not what people would usually associate with alcoholism. I'm not old and wrinkly and dirty and have taken all I can out of life. But what people don't realize is that alcoholism is a disease, just like diabetes, cancer. It doesn't necessarily have a cure, but it is treatable. And so, no, I don't go around committing felonies and just causing damage everywhere I go because I'm in treatment. And I'm hoping that a lot of people will get out of this talk that teenagers do suffer from alcoholism more than people know. 90% of addictions have roots in teen years. That means that 90% of all alcoholics, all addicts, develop the disease when they were teenagers. And only 10% of teenage alcoholics and addicts get the treatment that they need to recover. Alcoholism is an addiction to alcohol as well as the mental illnesses and disorders that come along with it. Like, for example, I struggle with depression and anxiety. Like, right now, I'm kind of freaking out talking in front of all you guys. But through recovery and through my journey through this entire crazy life that I've lived the past couple of years, I've learned that, like, I don't need to be ashamed of who I am. Like, I am an alcoholic. I do have depression. I do have anxiety. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. That doesn't make me a bad person. So I'll start off by telling my story. When I was in seventh grade, I experienced alcohol and marijuana for the first time. Older member of my family was very into it, and it was kind of always around me. And at that age, I didn't necessarily know who I was, but I wanted to. And I didn't really like myself that much. I thought that if I tried these things and became someone, anyone, it didn't really matter, then I would feel better about myself. I would have better self esteem. I would think of myself as more of a whole person. So I experienced that a couple times, and then my family member got put into a rehab. And so the next year, my eighth grade year, I didn't really use drugs or alcohol, but my depression worsened because since my primary addiction was taken away, my body didn't know what to do with all the feelings. I didn't know how to cope. I hadn't developed healthy coping skills that I would have. So my depression worsened, my anxiety worsened. I struggled with self-harm. My image of myself was so negative. And so once freshman year came around, I decided that I was going to pick up drugs and alcohol again. And so when it first started, it was not a lot, just usually with friends. And then throughout the year, it progressed and progressed until I was at the point where my depression was just as bad as it was my eighth grade year. I was still using drugs and alcohol. I was branching off into harder drugs. I was just falling apart on the inside. And the worst part was, no one knew about it. I kept everything below the surface. I know it's kind of easy with my image and everything to make everything seem like it's okay. I was getting good grades. My parents didn't know about my addiction. And I was just kind of skating by, like just on
For me, it was different. My parents knew about my addiction. They fed my addiction at a very young age. My dad would smoke weed with me every time I seen him. I started drinking when I was about 12 years old. um, when I was 14 and my life was chaotic, 15, that was about the time that they had started selling. Remember the other day I talked about mini thins being sold in the store? Um, Anybody was able to get them. You could just walk into a Unimart and get them. And I remember I got really addicted to those mini thins while I was drinking. But I want to listen to this girl's story a little bit, and then I'll continue my story as we go along and I remember things to say, because this was kind of on a whim after some memories. Okay, hold on.
The edge of the breakdown. And so the beginning of my sophomore year, everything was finally uncovered and I was put into rehab. And that's not necessarily the first place I wanted to go, but it was necessary. And at first, I didn't want to admit that I had a problem. I didn't want to admit that I was an alcoholic, because
I wasn't put into a rehab, ever. What I was put into was a group home. They didn't have very good rehab, but they knew my struggles. They knew that I was fighting really young teenage alcoholism. At the age of 15, my mom would throw my clothes out the window. I'd have to go gather them up and run away. I ran away from a group home one time. This is the story I want to tell. I met this girl. We ran away together. She introduced me to baby daddy Dean. Prior to me meeting that girl, I had a crush. God, 15 years old. Holy shit. It was this kid. He had come to visit his aunt and uncle in Lincoln Borough, just above Glassport, and I met him on the bank corner. We started drinking together. We started dating. We would play video games together at my mother's house while my mother's house was pure chaos. I started running away with him. We stayed in a little trailer. I talked about Raymond Little on Buzzy, Luke, and Jake's mother's property. These people that did not like my mother. So my mother didn't like my boyfriend because we kept running away together and staying in this little trailer on these people's property. Their parents were also never home, and they were also young alcoholics like myself that was doing many things. And I remember one night in particular, we were drinking, giving little pick and poke tattoos. I had a hard hair. My daughter-in-law redid it. I got a cross on my ankle. We were taking pills, many things. I think we might have even took some Vicodin and mixed all this shit together. This teenager that I had a crush on overdosed. We were going out the back door from the kitchen from their house to go into the trailer. I remember it. And he passed out and started convulsing. It was one of the scariest things I ever seen in my life. I believe it was from the mixture of the mini thins, the Vicodins, the alcohol. He went in an ambulance. I went home to deal with my mother kicking me out, throwing my clothes out the window again. I went to Glassport. Now, Jen had already, the girl, had already introduced me to Dean. And Dean was my savior. That's when he picked me up. I never loved that dude. Who knows what would have happened with me and the other kid had we not been drinking and taking drugs. But just the memory of that coming back to me reminded me again why I'm here. I think it's important that we look for signs of addiction in our children so that they don't repeat mistakes like I did. So we're going to listen to this TED Talk and then maybe move on to some other things where you can point out addictions in your children, things that can open your eyes so that things like that don't happen. Because I'm telling you, it's a scary fucking thing, and that scared the life out of me. Even to this day, I think about it all the time. And what would have happened if that dude died? I don't know where he is today. I haven't spoken to him since. But it's just a scary memory. And I want to prevent it from happening to other teenagers, especially with all of the meth and drugs that are out there. And they're cut with things like what is it called? Pseudodrin. I can't think of how to pronounce it. But they put that in the drugs they're making today. And they're mixing those kind of things without even people's knowledge. But let's listen to this girl for a little bit.
A teenager wants to admit that. I thought that I was just doing what teenagers were supposed to do. And so throughout my journey, I really learned a lot about myself and about alcoholism. Like, my disease has opened up so many opportunities for me. Like, I get to volunteer and work with the kids that I went to this rehab with, and I get to help new people that come in, and that just brightens up my week so much. I volunteer, I'm a dancer, I'm in choir. There's so much more to my life that I was kind of neglecting because drugs and alcohol were my primary focus. They were the most important thing in my life. Some of the myths about alcoholism are that if you just stop drinking, then the disease goes away, you're fine. That's all that there is to it. But alcoholism isn't necessarily all about alcohol. It's a thinking disease. It's a mental disease. So when people stop drinking, other qualities come out. They may be more dishonest, steal, lie, other addictions that were hiding below the surface as well. And so to truly recover, they need to focus on the root of the problem. You can't recover completely, but there is treatment, and as long as you keep doing the treatment, then you manage everything. Like, someone who has cancer takes chemotherapy to kind of keep it in check. And that's what I have to do to make sure that I maintain a healthy lifestyle. I'm hoping that you guys can spread the word about what addiction really is, because I know I was ashamed of who I was. I was ashamed that I was an alcoholic, ashamed that I was an addict. I thought people would look at me and not want to be around me because of the stigmas that go along with it. But I realized today that I am blessed to be an alcoholic because it has opened up so many options for me that I never knew were possible. It has made me into a person that I could have only dreamed of being. And I know without the help of my friends and family, none of it would have been possible. And there's actually a group of students at Barrington High School that struggles with the same things that I do. And every week during school, we meet and we just talk about recovery and addiction and where we are in our lives. And so it's slowly spreading that we don't have to be ashamed, we don't have to hide who we are, because there's nothing I can do to change who I am. I can't wake up one day and decide not to be an alcoholic. So I'm just extremely grateful for everything that I have now. And I could have never imagined standing up here and talking about this 2 years ago, but I'm really grateful that I had the opportunity to. And my name is Megan, and I'm an alcoholic.
For some reason, I thought that was longer. I swear I looked at it. Hold on.
Why do teens do drugs, and what's the connection between the teenage brain and addiction? Well, in this video, you'll hear from relationship expert Wendy Lin as she explains the real reason behind teen drug use, and it may not be what you think. Hey, it's Clint with Sandstone Care, where we help teens.
I'm blessed, Zeppelin. I was able to conquer my shit because of my son. My son was born and he changed my life. Listen, here's what I want to say to you. Don't let him go. Don't enable, but always send text messages and phone numbers, songs, things of memories that can reel him back in, things that make him happy. Don't give him money. If he's hungry, buy him a meal. But don't let him go, because he's going to need you one day when he decides that he's had enough. If he decides that. I have siblings that have not decided they had enough. I wish they would. But I think it's important to stop teen addiction before it starts, like the very second you see it. Because who knows what will go on. A lot of people don't survive it, and they end up in situations like this where you're praying they survive. Just let them know you think about them all the time. It's important. Drugs take over. They make you people that you were never meant to be. Alcohol, too.
Young adults and their families overcome challenges that come with substance use, addiction, and mental health conditions. All right, let's get right to it.
Well, what happens is we start off feeling some feelings. So it could be loneliness, and we could feel lonely in a crowd of people. So they might feel lonely because they're not related to their peers, or all of a sudden a friend isn't talking to them, or someone says something that's hurtful. So you're feeling lonely, you're feeling angry. And a lot of times kids don't have a avenue to express anger because we're told, calm down, that's not okay. And so those feelings are just getting stuffed and stuffed and stuffed. And what happens is if you don't resolve that initial feeling of anger, of loneliness, of boredom, it's so funny with everything at our fingertips now. So many kids say that they're bored. And so boredom is a state of mind, and it's a way that they're thinking about a situation.
I agree with that sentiment. I feel like children have their phones in their palm of their hands, and that is now their best friend. Kids don't go outside and play anymore. You don't see them playing baseball or softball or basketball or running down the street, tag. What you see when you see kids walking down the street is cell phones. Imagine how lonely the kids today feel rather than what we did. Hey, little Dev. You know what I mean? Like their phones have become their best friends. So I agree with that. That has taken a whole aspect of life away. Hmm. Give it some time. Let the two of you calm down and see what he does. Wait a couple weeks, a month or two, and just send him a message and let him know you love him. That's the only thing that's going to break addiction. They have to know they're wanted. In my opinion, one of the only things. But I do understand because I've had to let family members go in the same way. I definitely get it. All right.
Because literally,
And I'm very, very, very sorry you went through that Friday night. Love to you, honey. It's hard.
there's no reason any of us need to be bored, but kids feel like they're bored. And so they're going to do something to distract themselves or to numb themselves. And it starts off as a very smart a smart solution to their problem. But what happens is if they don't resolve the initial problem of why they're feeling that way, it just intensifies. And so what I explain to people is then we start calling that anxiety or stress. So we're feeling angry, we don't resolve it, then it keeps amping up, and we call that anxiety and stress. And then we keep amping up the behavior that comforts us or makes us feel better. Eventually what happens is two things. Either we drop into depression, and if you think about depression is the opposite of anxiety and stress, right? Depression is, I don't want to eat, I don't want to get out of bed, I don't want to do anything. And that's our unconscious mind. Remember, our unconscious mind runs our body. It wants us to be healthy. And when we're in a stress and anxiety state all the time, it's really unhealthy for your body. So what it does is it drops you into depression. So you slow down, you turn off those feelings, you numb from those feelings. And then people go back to that feeling of anxiety and stress again because they haven't resolved that initial reason why they're feeling anxiety.
And that's the saddest thing. The addict doesn't understand how it affects, or they understand and they don't care once they're so far into addiction. It definitely affects the whole family, friends, people even in a distance, lives, the way life will roll on for people. Lots of things.
And stress. The other thing that happens is people get sick, they get ill, because that also stops you. And illness makes you single focus and gets away from the feelings or anxiety. So the way that I work with people is, what's the initial thought, circumstance that's causing you to feel those difficult feelings? And instead of going to, the eating, the drinking, whatever you're doing to distract yourself, let's resolve this.
If you want to learn more about treatment options for you, your teen, or young adult, then tell us about your situation on a confidential.
We don't need that. I gotta find a better video, guys. Hold on. Oh.
Were you, or a loved one, diagnosed with ovarian cancer after 2002?
Let's try this one.
When you're feeling all alone, only you don't.
My name is Will. I grew up a perfect, life. Not perfect, but I had the necessities that I needed, and I had great friends. I remember.
I'm so happy I could help Zeppelin. That's what I'm here for. And I thought that little story from my past would be a way to open up and eye open, because I do remember that was like scary as fuck. I remember thinking, like, what if this dude dies right here? I pray you guys get through it, Zeppelin. I really do.
Remember going on field trips often. I really enjoyed those moments, especially when the whole family got together.
Can you please stop? Enough. Oh, someone's in trouble.
We're really fortunate in that regards.
Oh, how do you do that?
I can even pick a card and you got it.
I had some great memories of family times, embracing the moment, and great fond memories of laughter.
Oh, look at that. Move them.
This ain't the video. That's too happy dap musically, and that girl looked like Kate from Kate Plus 8. We're done. Let's go find a different one. Sorry. I should have been more prepared. It was a kind of on the whim thing. Here we go. 6-minute video.
Young people are dying. They're overdosing on heroin and fentanyl. You wonder, how did this young person get to this horrible spot in life? Let's turn back the clock. Go back in time, to younger days, to understand how addiction starts, to understand how to prevent it from happening. While each addiction situation is different, there are generally 3 ingredients. First, teens have a lot to cope with. Many teenagers are trying to figure out, who am I? What is my identity? And there is stress. When teens were asked, they said the number one reason they used drugs was to deal with the pressures and stress of school. And some teens have to cope with stress at home. There could be emotional neglect, abuse, divorce, a family member with an illness, a family member who is addicted, the death of a loved one, money troubles, or other challenges. Many teens also need to cope with depression or social anxiety. In addition to a lot to cope with, some teenagers, through no fault of their own, have poor coping skills. Maybe their parent or parents have been caught up in their work or other family crises and do not even realize that their teenage child needs help. Maybe their parent or parents are struggling themselves and are simply not able to teach their kids how to constructively cope with life. And teens who experience day-to-day depression or social anxiety may develop an unwarranted negative self-image. This can make it tougher to cope. The third ingredient to addiction that may be present is certain brain chemistry. Some people, by virtue of how their brain processes chemicals, get hooked easier. You can attribute this to your family tree, otherwise known as genetics. Genetic susceptibility doesn't have to be present for a teen to develop addiction, but it can increase their chances. All 3 of these pieces do not have to be present for addiction to happen. Any one piece, if strong enough, can lead a teen down the addiction path. So how does addiction start? Here's what happens. A teen has a lot to cope with and poor coping skills. They try alcohol and drugs. Maybe their brain chemistry causes them to be more susceptible. The teen's brain learns that, at least in the short term, the alcohol or drugs gives them a way to temporarily neglect or forget the stresses in their life, which is a flawed way of coping. That can become their identity. The party friend who is willing to try anything, or the friend who can get you drugs. It might give them a way to fit in socially and have fun. It might help them for a moment forget about their stress. The teen starts using alcohol or drugs more frequently. This is where things come apart. Repeated use does 3 things. The teen's brain has learned that, in the short term, alcohol and drugs can help them cope. With repeated use, this bad learning loop becomes ingrained and deeper. The teenager gets to the point of automatically reaching for alcohol or drugs when they're stressed, without even thinking about it. With repeated use, the chemicals in alcohol and drugs also change the brain, making the teenager even less self-aware of how they're going off the rails. And repeated use makes life situations worse, which just increases stress and feeds into the negative loop. Without a change, this path ends in addiction, jail, or death. 1 out of 10 adults struggle with addiction. Addiction leads to broken families, broken promises, and broken hearts, and currently an increasing number of deaths. So, how do we prevent this from happening? How do we prevent addiction? Here's how. First, a message for parents. Spend concentrated one-on-one time with your kids, particularly when they get into middle school and all through high school and college. Truly listen to them with love and without judgment. Understand what they are coping with. Help them get through. If you need help, talk to an experienced professional. Do not wait. Act now. And remember, your child could simply be experimenting and have a brain more susceptible to alcohol and drugs. It could be that simple and scary. Or your child could be going through something that you're not fully aware of. There is inevitably a lot going through their head. When you get in a car accident in the wintertime, the accident doesn't happen when you hit the telephone pole. It happens 200 feet before that when you start skidding on the ice. Your child may be skidding right now, and neither they nor you even recognize it. Act now. Do not assume they can self-correct. They need an established support system. Listen to them and help them immediately. Now, a message for teenagers. You are not alone. It may feel that way. Who else could be going through this or having these thoughts? But whatever you're experiencing, many others have experienced this too, and they've come out happy on the other end. Do not take on the identity of the party friend. It will kill you. You can find an identity without drug and alcohol dependency. Your true identity, a better identity. Finally, be open to receiving help from your family, a friend, or from a professional, wherever it comes from. When your body has an illness, you see a doctor. When your body has an injury, you see a physical therapist. But what about your brain? When you're on a bad path, a therapist can help you get on the positive one. The therapist can help you step back, gain perspective, and develop strong coping skills no matter what life throws your way, like a personal trainer for the brain. Getting help is a strength, not a weakness. You deserve to be truly happy. You deserve to be comfortable with your own thoughts. You can be. Peace and love. In memory of our oldest son, Alex.
I think that about summed it up. So now let's go look for one for signs of addiction. I watched this one. This one's about weed. I ain't too worried about weed, although weed could lead, right, Zeppelin, to other things, but today the world's more scary than weed, in my opinion. There's so many cases like that. I had a friend who rode dirt bikes. He's no longer here today, and I'm not going to give a name. But he had a foot severed from riding a dirt bike. He had gone through pain, and he was really young teenager. They gave him pain pills, and it started a lifetime of addiction until he passed away. Not only for him, but for his siblings he gave them to as well. Heartbreaking how that's how a lot of addiction starts, is with a pain. It also sucks for those that have pains that need the medicine that ain't addicted and can't get it. That's what that lawsuit was down there in Tennessee that they won. When I get off of here, I'll set up for a live later tonight. I want to pull the stuff. I said that last week too. I want to pull the stuff from drug court and all the lawsuit and that down in Tennessee so that I could show you that. We'll do that during another day live, though, instead of a night one, because I keep the night shit girl on. I'm trying to keep the day shit more focused and based on important stuff. But okay, let's go. Here we go. 10 major warning signs.
Between normal teen experimentation with drugs and alcohol versus dealing with a teenager or maybe even a young adult or college student who's developed an addiction problem. So in this video, I'm going to tell you the top 10 signs that you're dealing with a problem, not experimentation. And make sure you catch the whole video because the last two are huge, major warning signs, and you want to know exactly what they are. Let's start with the obvious. Number one, you've caught them multiple times. So you've caught them red-handed, like in the act, like you've caught them smoking weed, or you keep finding alcohol in their car or something like that. So you've caught them multiple times. You've had several conversations with them about it. You've done all the normal parenting, like you're in trouble, you're grounded. I know the new word is restrictions. That's fancier. All the stuff, you're taking the Xboxes and the keys, and it just keeps happening. That's a pretty good place to start. You've caught them multiple times and you've put the punishments in place and it's not going away. So sign number two that you're dealing with a problem is that your kid is like extra super duper irritable. I know that teenagers can be moody and difficult, but if your kid, you just say good morning and they want to bite your head off, they're constantly arguing with you. It feels like they're always picking fights with you. A lot of times it's usually with one parent more than the other. Most of the time it's the mom. So if they're constantly picking a fight with you, that's a big sign. Like more than normal teenage stuff, like constantly arguing like big giant blow-ups. Symptom number three, they've changed friend groups. In fact, kids with a drug or alcohol problem often change friend groups a couple of times. So that first change is where they go from their like lifelong childhood friends, you know, Billy next door that he went to kindergarten with, and now all of a sudden he doesn't really want to hang out with them anymore, starts hanging out with the cool kids, kind of more popular, he's got more stuff to do, all that stuff. And then sometimes they'll even switch a second time to an even different friend group. They move from the cool kids to the drug kids. And I'm not talking about, okay, these are the kids that have fun, you know, on the weekends at a party. I'm talking about these are the kids that's what they're known for. The stoners, the drug kids, the ones that are in trouble. So you can see there's a clear differentiation of stages going on there.
That bothers me. I'm going to disagree with her here. Okay, you do notice those things, but do you not love your children's friends? Do you not see the signs in your children's friends and do you not try to help them because they're young teenagers too? For me, it was my mom keeping me away from those kids that caused me to want to do it more. Wouldn't it be better to have welcome those kids into your home, do non-drug things for them instead of like my mom would give us the drugs and alcohol? You know what I mean? And show them that there's more to life than partying. Don't let your child go out and hang with them, but instead invite them over and maybe you could be a change for another teenager other than your own. I cannot stand when people single kids out because you never know what that other child is going through at home that's causing that. And when a parent goes, oh, I don't like that child, they come from a bad family and this, that, and the other, it just makes the other teenager worse. Like, why ain't I good enough to hang out with your kid? Please keep that in mind. That's just my thoughts on it. Don't allow your kid to go like party with the kids, but invite them over and have parties that don't include drugs and alcohol. Get to know your kids' friends because you can probably make a difference in their lives too if you really try. I know I have in a few kids' lives, and they've told me that.
Number 4, they stop being involved in their lifelong, like their activities and interests and hobbies, the thing that they've always loved. If they've always loved dance, they literally want to be a professional dancer when they grow up, and now they're just not very interested in it anymore. They've probably made up reasons why they just kind of want to stop doing that activity, or they haven't engaged in it in a while. They don't have interest in the things they used to have interest in. That's a pretty good sign. If they've always played baseball, love baseball, want to go to college on a baseball scholarship, but now they don't care, that might be a problem. Now they're going to tell you something that sounds logical, like,
See, that's the difference with me, though, Zeppelin. And I get parents doing that. I didn't. And I'm going to tell you why, because I made it easy for my kids to come talk to me. You know what I mean? Like if they seen something that was scary, I would watch it with them. I allowed them to listen to music with cuss words. I'm going to tell you why. When you're fucking angry and you need to get your anger out, it's better to fucking cuss during a song than to pop a pill or drink a beer. You know what I mean? You do need to censor and keep an eye on everything they do, because you do have the dark web and you have people trying to take your kids from the web. We hear Squall talk about how she was making different platforms and shit for parents and inviting them and all that other shit, inviting the kids, making them trust her. That's so fucking scary, man. But yes, you do have to censor things, but watch how far you censor it, because sometimes, like with me as a teenager, I had felt that, again, when you take things away, it makes you want it more. I would rather, with my children, explain the scary situation rather than keep them from it. But that's just me. You guys go parent how you want. Definitely censor, but watch what you're censoring. Let your children, I let my children grow up to be their own people. Like my daughter wanted different color hair. Fuck it. Get different color hair. When she was 16, she wanted the nose piercing right here. Listen, find your identity, girl. You know what I mean? Just that she had a friend. Oh my goodness. When they were 14 years old, her best friend became addicted to doing things she shouldn't have been doing. I truly believe, I'm going to take credit, that I taught my daughter to come and talk to me about those things. And she did. I reached out to the girl's parents. My daughter decided to walk away from that girl on her own and not introduce those things into her life. Instead, she came home and told me, and that's because I didn't censor her from the scary truth. But at the same time, I didn't have a choice, because her other best friend's parents passed away from ODing. And we had to deal with that. So I was in a situation where I had to, it was a different situation. Yes. Don't push your kids' friends away, because that just makes things worse for other kids too, in my opinion. That's what it did for me. Oh, I think there's way more pain clinics than that, Terry. I think they're in every city and state, and there's many people that run them. We know about these ones because we've been following Summer's case. Yeah, keep the kids busy. Like in Glassport, where I lived, there was pool halls and things like that, and the police started fining kids for walking down the street. You weren't allowed to sit on the street for more than 90 seconds, and if you did, you got a fine. Then they started shutting down the 2 pool halls we had. That was all we had. There was an arcade in a church, or like a youth group. I don't even know that it was a church. I don't know what the fuck the shit was. They shut that down, and kids didn't have nothing to do, and they started using, drinking, sitting on the riverbanks. Right? Jesus, wouldn't that be nice? Just shelter your kids from everything. They never see the bad. All right, let's put the rest of these signs on because I'm not going to be on much longer here. I got some things I need to do today.
Well, my coach is a jerk, or this or that, or I'm just burnt out. But pay attention. If they're not doing any of those things that they used to do that they loved, big sign. Number 5. Ooh, this is an important one. You and your spouse are arguing about it all the time. So one of you is going to be the good cop and one of you is going to be the bad cop. And you just can't get on that same parenting page about, is it a problem? How big of a problem it is, let alone what to do about it. A big thing that we do when we assess the problem is see how much conflict is going on in the family about the situation. Sometimes even if they're siblings, sometimes they get into the conflict because they're either mad at their brother or sister for what they're doing, or they're mad at you, the parent, because they feel like you're always on their case. And so they sort of align with the kid. If that's happening, you got big trouble. Number 6, they seem like they're constantly struggling with anger, anxiety, or depression. Most of the time when kids are using drugs, eventually they'll develop an anxiety disorder. And so they will come to you and complain about anxiety. And probably when you caught them using drugs, they say they need it because it's the only thing that makes their anxiety better. That's a pretty good sign. So they're complaining about anxiety and they're using drugs to fix their anxiety problem. That's a big problem. Number 7 is grades. Their grades are changing. Like they were always a good student and now their grades are just getting worse and worse and worse. I know they're going to have lots of excuses, but you know your kid, you know kind of where they usually average out or they stay. If there's a big change in those grades, you might want to look further. Now, I will tell you, you don't always get a big change in grades. Sometimes you actually get a big change in grades for the better for a little while. Depends on what drug they're using. So if they're using stimulants or they're using pain pills, those grades might go up. So when I say change in grades, I mean they could go really up or really down. Number 8, they're missing a lot of school. I mean, if your kid's skipping school, what do you think's going down? Probably not something super good. Chances are if they're skipping school, they're into something they shouldn't be. Okay, now these last 2, these are the biggies. I'm about to tell them to you, and I'm telling you, if you see either one of these signs, you can forget all about the rest of those, because if you see these last 2, you not only do you have a problem, but you probably got a really big problem. So you can quit arguing about it with your spouse and immediately seek some help. Okay, so number 9 is you're missing money or items or things in your house. You put your ring down and you know you left it in there and all of a sudden it's gone. And you knew you had $20 in your wallet, but it's gone. And there was this mysterious break-in last summer when you guys were on summer vacation and somebody took a bunch of stuff. If you're missing things or money more than once, you might should look deeper. That's a pretty big sign because it means not only is your kid using drugs, but they're using drugs so much that they're actually stealing to support the habit. Now that is huge. Not only does it mean a problem, it means it's a pretty progressed problem. Okay, this last one. If this happens to you, I'm telling you, like, don't pass go, don't collect $200, like, immediately get some help because you definitely are in trouble. Okay, number 10 is if another one of their friends reach out to you and they say to you they're worried about your kid because they've been doing a lot of drugs or they're super scared of what they might do or they feel like it might be getting out of hand, that is huge. Because guess what? In young people land, you don't turn on your friend and call their parents unless you're freaking scared to death. And so if another young person is calling you to warn you about what's going on with your kid, then the other young person's scared. And probably the other young person's doing drugs too. So what that means is your kid is doing so much drugs, it's scaring the other kid that's doing drugs too. If you see those last 2 symptoms, you definitely have a problem. Now, if you've been listening to this video and you're kind of freaking out on the inside and you're going, oh my gosh, like, you're describing me, Amber. In fact, we get a lot of phone calls a week like that. They say, oh my gosh, I watched your videos and it was like you're living in my house. If you just had one of those moments and you felt like I have been spying on your house, then take advantage of this free resource. So I have this playbook that I've written for parents. It's called Stop the Chaos. Get your kids' life back on track and your family back in order. So just click the link below and it'll give you access to what you need to download that playbook.
All right. I think I'm going to conclude here. Yeah, my parents were addicts in the 70s and 80s, big time. That's when it started. I'm so sorry. I really am, Zeppelin, and I hope you and your son. Well, my mother was an alcoholic and my father was the addict. And then my mother became an addict along with the alcohol. Oh, all right, guys. I'm going to get off of here. Peace and love. Look for the signs with your children. Where I grew up in a small town. Oh, yeah. Me too. Right in front of everywhere. I'll talk to you guys later. I'm going to find something to cover maybe. But if not, I'll be back tomorrow afternoon with something like this. I just thought that was an important thing to cover. I want to go through the lawsuit. That's a lot of work and research, though. I'll find something for tomorrow, and I'll start working on that for the drug court and stuff. Thank you, Zeppelin. You guys rock. Peace and love. Mwah. I'll see you later or tomorrow. Have a good day. Bye.